Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
Are we ready? Are we ready?
We're testing. We're testing.
Here we go. Here we go. Wait, why am I glitching? Did I glitch?
You did for a second, but you're okay now.
Okay, here we go. It's better to burn out than to fade away, Chaos Kids.
Ooh.
I'm Naomi.
Yeah, it is. I'm Amber, and this is Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Hi, sister.
Hi, sister.
We were like wasting all of our good chit chat before we hit record.
I know. It's never a waste. I mean,
no, not a waste, but the long and the short of it is we both incidentally had ordered pizza for dinner last night kind of night, and the weather has been shifting here in the Pacific Northwest. Yesterday was an unusually warm day, and I was excited because thanks to the goodwill and hard work of Amber and her partner, the Jeep is officially topless. And I got to drive around in that 80+ degree weather yesterday in a sundress, slathered in sunscreen, with no top on the Jeep, and it was amazing.
I love that for you. That for you.
Me too. So thank you.
Sure
again.
thing. Yeah.
Forever
anytime.
grateful. Forever grateful for that.
Of course.
What's going on, sister?
Well, my bestie is in town from Montana, so she stayed the last 2 nights with me.
You know what's so funny is you literally said you ordered pizza because Allison was over, and I did not even clock it. Like,
because
Allison's
she's
in town.
She's been such a fixture for so long. We forget that she's not here, but she's not.
So she's staying with you. That's exciting.
Well,
How fun.
She's moved on now. She stayed 2 nights with me.
She's moved on.
She's got to make her rounds, which I understand.
Sure. Yeah.
I would like to hog her to myself, but she has lots of people she needs to see before she heads back. But so yeah, I took yesterday off, and we just visited all day.
You took a day off just to hang out with your bestie. I love that.
I know, like,
so much. I don't know, but I love
off.
This version of you. This is amazing.
Yeah, and we did nothing. We ate too much food. We walked down the street and got pedicures and ice cream. And then
that sounds like one of the best days ever. Those are the best days. I love an entire day of eating and sitting on the couch with a bestie.
Yeah.
That is amazing. One of my girlfriends went and spent a couple of nights with her son and his girlfriend. And it was like the first time she'd really done anything like that in a really long time. And she was talking to a group of us about it. And somebody said something about, she went off and partied. And she was like, I wouldn't call it partying. I just went from my spot at home to like another couch somewhere else.
Yes.
And then one of our other friends was like, where I come from in my world, that is partying. Like just moving couches to someone else's couch.
Oh yeah. The scenery has changed. It's a party.
Yes, that's a party.
Fuck yeah, it is.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh my God.
So good. I love that so much. Are you drinking?
I am. Yeah, I'm drinking some Chardonnay, and this is going to be one where you laugh at my pronunciation. Placer Andulez.
Andulez?
Andulez from Spain. It's a Chardonnay from Spain.
Okay.
So
sure, Andulez. Why not?
That's right.
Sounds great. Nailed it.
I fucking again. I'm basically bilingual.
Hey, sister, don't we have a new Chaos Kid Club member to announce today?
Do. We have a new member named Alden.
Alden.
I
don't know where you came from, but we're glad to have you.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. You're in the right place.
Absolutely.
You're in the right place. Yeah.
Yes.
Hope to see you at Wine Night, which will have passed by the time you hear this, but hasn't actually passed.
That's right. It's coming up soon for us. It happened over a week ago for you.
Yes.
It's going to be wonderful.
That's right. It's going to
be. Or it was wonderful. Yes.
Yep.
All of those things. Because you know what? The thing is, you guys, time is not linear. It's actually a circle. So all things are always happening all at once.
That's right.
Everything, everywhere, all the time.
It's the circle of life.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, sister,
yeah,
I have a giant Mama Jamma chaos story for you today that I've been teasing it to you for like a week.
I know. Thank you for that.
So let's get into it. Like, tell me what you've got.
Okay, well, this is sad. So I'm going to tell you.
Mine is too, but
Great.
okay, yeah, great. It's gonna be kind of a double Debbie Downer, you guys.
Okay.
We haven't had one in a while, so here we go.
I think last week was one, but we don't need to get in the weeds about it.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to even know. All right, we're going to go to Detroit, Michigan in 2019. Okay. It's the night of May 25th. There is a large house party in Detroit, which was underway, and it was a whole bunch of young adults who were part of the LGBTQ plus community, who were part of what is called the ballroom scene. Have you heard of the ballroom scene?
Yes, of course. Like it's like where voguing came from.
Yeah, it's a whole.
Have you ever watched any of those old documentaries or any of that stuff about voguing?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you should. I love it so much.
So yes, that's what was going on. They're all about the ballroom culture.
I want to be at this party so bad.
I mean, I do too. Okay, sorry, I'm already tangenting. Have you seen that fucking funny thing that it keeps going around on my reels of the kid? I think it must be his mom, and he's got one of those flip fans.
Yes,
and he keeps dancing in front of her face and flipping the fan. I love it so much.
Also tangential, but partly related. There is a really, really great show, and I don't know what network actually aired it or if it's even still on, but they have it on. I think I've watched it on Netflix. It's called Pose. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of it or seen it?
I've heard of it, yeah.
It is a fictionalized like story of that time in the 80s, like in New York, when like that whole scene was like big and starting and thriving.
I think I watched some of it. My friend Dylan recommended it to me.
It's really
sounding familiar.
It's a really great show.
Okay, well, this underground LGBTQ plus subculture, ballroom culture, is really rooted in Black and Latino communities. Mm-hmm. So it's like dance and fashion and runway walks. It's like a safe space for self-expression, right?
Yep.
So Blair Keys was at this party that night. It's around 4 a.m. when a group of them from the party went to the local gas station on Mack Avenue. So from the party was Alante, Timothy, Paris, and Blair. Mm-hmm. You can see all of them on the surveillance cameras from the gas station, and they're all in a good mood and like beat bopping around the mini mart, having a good time, right?
Yeah.
And there's a guy at the gas station who catches Paris's eye. And so as they're driving off, Paris yells out the window for the guy to come back to their house for the party, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, woo, come on, you know?
Yeah. It's like, would you say like 4:00 in the morning?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So a few minutes later, the guy from the gas station shows up at the house party. And he seems to be down for whatever. Everyone said that he got right in there and started having a good time. And it was shortly after he arrived that the house party kind of turned into like an oral sex party. But everyone was willing. Like,
sounds fun. Mm-hmm. I'm in. I'm still at this party.
Mm-hmm. And even gas station guy is like participating, right?
Sure.
So they're all laughing and referring to their new friend as a trade, meaning he's like a straight guy not out of the closet. Like, ooh, we've got a trade in here, right? Then the new friend goes back to the gas station to like purchase something or whatever. And on the video, you can see him go up to pay and he sort of throws his money at the cashier in a rude way. Like, even though not that long ago, that same cashier interacted with him and he was really friendly. And now he's kind of being a dick.
Okay.
Then you see him outside of the gas station and he is pacing back and forth and like dry heaving. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. So then at 5 a.m., someone walks into the house party wearing all black and a ski mask and starts shooting.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It's gas station guy, right?
You always do this.
So sorry. Keep going.
Not taking questions at this time.
Okay.
So Blair is able to make it to the bathroom with his cell phone and he calls 911. Paris and Alante were both shot right outside of the bathroom door. They were shot in the head.
Oh my God.
I know. Then a second 911 call comes in from the house and it's Armand. Armand is in the basement with Timothy, who has also been shot in the chest.
Oh.
And Armand is trying to stop the bleeding with like instructions from the dispatcher, right? When officers arrive, Alante and Timothy had already passed away. And Paris passed away from her injuries about 10 hours later at the hospital. I know. You can see the shooter on like different ring cams through the neighborhood, like running down the street away from the home, but they're all in black and in a ski mask. All you can see is like a silhouette, right?
Yeah.
But it appeared to be a light complexion black male with a small frame. So investigators bring Blair in for an interview because he was the best witness to the whole thing. And he isn't able to provide much of a description because, again, the guy had a ski mask on. But it was during the interview that police learned that Blair says that the guy that they met at the gas station that night was a light-skinned black man and was also kind of a slight build. He's like roughly like 5'8" and kind of skinny.
Okay. Yeah.
They bring Armand in, but he was in the basement. He never saw the intruder like come into the house, you know?
Right.
But when they asked him who he thought might have done it, he said the only person he could think of was who he referred to as BP Boy, which was the gas station guy.
Right.
He said, you know, he thought that that was the case because this guy was like on the down low, right?
Right.
So Detroit PD has classified this as a hate crime. And per their practice, they bring in an LGBTQ plus liaison, which I
Okay.
think is like great that they have that.
At least they have that.
Mm-hmm. Police pull the video from the gas station and they're able to get a really clear image of gas station boy.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to get like a crystal clear image of his face. And they used facial recognition technology to get a name that they did have in their database. And they believe that gas station boy is Devon Robinson.
Okay.
Because he had priors.
Right.
They get his address and go to his home on Buckingham Road, which is down the street from the gas station. But when they get to the home, they learn that Devon and his mom moved out the night before.
The night before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just moved the night before. They're just gone now.
Like the day after the shooting.
Okay.
They moved out. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're able to get a phone number for his mom, but she was uncooperative and refused to speak to the police.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't blame her.
I don't blame her either. Yeah.
No judgment about mom not talking to the cops.
Mm-mm. So police are able to get like ring cam footage from a whole bunch of people, and they can literally watch the person who is running from the house party and run all the way to Buckingham Road, and they can see the person actually running into Devon's home on Buckingham Road.
Uh-huh.
It's like, yep, like right into the house. So they get that very clear footage from the gas station and push it out to the media with the message that they are looking for this person in relation to a triple homicide.
Yeah.
So tips start coming in regarding the location of Devon Robinson because he's like hiding out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It only took police a week and a half to find him and arrest him. When they bring him in for questioning, they're like, look, we already know what you did. We're just trying to figure out why you did it.
Yeah.
And initially, he's like sitting there very guarded with his arms across his chest, and he's acting like, I don't know what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after a lot of sort of gentle probing, he finally admits that he did meet that group of people at the gas station and he did go back to the house party.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was nervous because nobody in his life knows that he's on the down low. He was extremely embarrassed about what went on at the house. And he said that he got out of there, but he was not the shooter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of this case?
No.
Because apparently it was like major and I had never heard of it either.
Never heard of it.
Mm-hmm. So they tell him about the residential cameras tracking him literally from the house to his house.
Yeah.
And like, you can't deny technology, but he won't confess.
I mean, he's DL, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's like par for the course with people like that.
Yeah, he's like, don't.
Deny, deny, deny.
Exactly. And when they ask him, like, why did your mom and you move out the next day? He's like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So they don't have a confession to the crime, but he did already confess to being at the party. So the interview ends, but he is charged with 3 counts of murder and he's put into custody, right?
Okay.
He tells his parents that all of the witnesses are lying about him being there, right? Like he's really protecting this. Like he doesn't want it to get out that he participated in these activities at this party.
Uh, this
Mhm.
is the problem with purity culture.
Mhm. The
This is
prosecutor in this case said it really well. She was like, this is a hate crime. And a lot of that hate was his own self hatred,
yes.
which is like sad.
It's absolutely devastating all
Mm-hmm.
around, and these are the deadly consequences of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. So he tells his parents all the witnesses are lying about him. The trial starts, and apparently it's televised. Like it was a big deal.
Oh.
And the crux of the case hinges on the jurors being able to positively identify, beyond a reasonable doubt that he was the shooter, right?
Mhm.
Not just that it was likely that he was because he was there earlier and obviously upset, but like
Right.
for surezies he was.
Right.
And the defense is saying that like nobody in the house could actually identify the shooter, so you can't say that. Which is this is the problem with the
This is
law
true. This
because
is
that's true.
true. And even tracking this person from that house to the house where he lived with his mom without being able to identify him, technically you can't say it was him.
Yep. There's no DNA, there's no fingerprints, there's no positive ID from any of the witnesses in the home.
Mm.
I know. So the prosecution's key witness was Blair. And Blair testifies that the skin complexion and the eyes of the shooter matched Devon Robinson. They also have Armand testify, and he testified about how Devon acted after the sexual acts at the party. He says that Devon seemed like really shook up, like he was disgusted. Prosecutors call the detective to the stand who interviewed Devon, and they played the full 3-hour interrogation for the jurors. And
God, did anyone fall asleep? Jesus, 3 hours.
yeah.
Fuck.
Uh-huh. And I mean, they really like hammered it on him, but he kept his, you know, he's done this a million times before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Devon's attorney decided not to have him testify.
Smart.
Yeah. So Devon was only 18 at the time, and it was clear that he was like really struggling with his own identity and sexuality. And so the fear was that the jurors would feel bad for him and not convict him.
Right.
But the jurors did ultimately return with a guilty verdict. And because he was 18 years old at the time, Michigan's like state law says that he can't face a sentence of life in prison at 18.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Victims' families address the court and request a minimum of 40 years. The victim families addressing the court was fucking heartbreaking. It was awful.
I bet.
Awful. Paris's dad couldn't even get through his.
No.
I know. It was harmless fun, you know?
I do know.
Yeah, it's like what the fuck, dude?
It's just sex.
Yeah, and nobody drug you to the party.
There
Like you
was
went
no
there
coercion.
you went there willing. Like why did you go there then?
He showed up on his own volition. They didn't even take him with them. They just threw out an invitation and he came.
Mm-hmm.
He came.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, how is that a bad thing in any fucking book? I don't understand.
I don't know.
I
So when Devon addresses the court before his sentencing, he finally does confess to being the shooter, and he admits that his own past traumas, that led him to doing this and that he has not forgiven himself. The judge said, quote, "This was not an impulsive act. You left the party, went home, changed your clothes, and came back."
Yeah.
So Devon was sentenced to 35 to 60 years in prison per homicide.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Concurrent or consecutive?
Probably consecutive. And that is the horrific fucking Detroit hate crime. I told you mine was really short.
It's okay. That one packed a punch. Wow.
I know.
Wow. I mean, and the way he talked about how he's like carrying the shame of what he did to them.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is just shame upon shame upon shame.
I know. The thing that I learned too in like the trial is that his mom is gay. So it's like he talked a lot about like his dad and his uncle like not being okay with him being gay, but it's like
the patriarchy, man. It fucking ruins everybody and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like I don't even have words. It's all so unnecessary.
I know. I know.
It's like somebody was saying the other day, like, people are weird and so is their sex. And like, that's okay. Like, it doesn't, like, whatever it is you're doing, as long as everyone's consenting, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why? Oh.
Yeah. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well, sister.
Yeah.
That was a big bummer. You actually made me cry a little bit
I'm
today.
sorry.
So no, don't, it's been a while. So
it was actually last episode, but it's okay.
Did I cry last episode?
I think
too?
so. I mean, we don't need to get into the weeds about it.
There's no way to know.
There isn't.
Okay. Are you ready?
Let's hear this Mama Jamma. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like right out the gate. You're going to know.
Okay.
And so it's going to be, Kurt Cobain was born February 20th, 1967
R.I.P.
in Aberdeen, Washington. Aberdeen is a logging town and a shipping port with a population at its highest. It's never had more than 20,000 people living there.
Right.
Kurt's mom, Wendy, was a waitress. His dad, Donald, was a car mechanic. His younger sister, Kimberly, was born in April of 1970. Kurt's family was an artistic and a musical one. One of his uncles, one of his aunts, and one of his great uncles all played or sang in bands. And one of his grandmothers was an artist by profession.
Oh.
So Kurt got all these talents: drawing, singing, playing instruments. Kurt was described as a sweet and happy kid until his parents divorced when he was 9. This is when he became withdrawn and started acting up. He lived primarily with his dad, who remarried to a woman who had 2 kids of her own, and then they had a kid together, and Kurt was just unhappy. Wendy, his mom, started dating a guy that was abusive to the point of sending her to the hospital one time. God. But she refused to press charges, and she stayed in that relationship. By the time Kurt was 12 or 13, Wendy granted full custody of Kurt to Dawn. And Kurt was 14 when his uncle bought him a used guitar for his birthday. Kurt's behavior as a teenager became too much for Dawn and his new wife, who decided they didn't have the capacity to deal with him and sent him to live with family and friends.
I don't understand what that means, really.
I mean, I took in one of my friend's teenage sons for a while.
Who didn't have the capacity to deal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of these that he stayed with was Kurt's, one of his good friends, Jesse, whose family was born-again Christians. And Kurt briefly became devout himself until he later denounced Christianity altogether and would regularly go on anti-God rants. Dawn was clearly desperate for Kurt to be a normal boy, and he pushed Kurt to join the wrestling team in junior high, which Kurt hated. And he lost on purpose to disappoint his dad and probably to get out of participating any longer.
That's pretty smart.
His dad also enrolled him in Little League, where Kurt again played like shit in order to stay on the bench. When Kurt made friends with a gay kid at school, he started getting bullied for being gay, even though Kurt wasn't gay. But he said he liked that people assumed that he was. It meant that they mostly avoided him, which suited him just fine.
Okay.
And then he met Buzz Osborne, singer and guitarist of the Melvins, who introduced Kurt to punk and hard rock. And while people who knew Kurt would say his first ever concert attendance was Sammy Hagar at the Seattle Center Coliseum, Kurt himself would say his first ever concert was the Melvins' free show outside the Thriftway supermarket.
That's amazing.
And so began his love of the punk scene and regular trips to Seattle to go to shows.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt often hung out with the Melvins in their practice space, which is how he met Chris Novoselic.
Oh, wow.
Midway through high school, Kurt moved back in with his mom, and 2 weeks before graduation, he dropped out when he realized he didn't have enough credits to graduate with his class. Wendy told him he had to get a job or get out. A week later, Kurt came home to find all his things boxed up, so he bailed and started couch surfing, once in a while sneaking back into Wendy's place to crash secretly in her basement. It was right after this when Kurt formed his first band, Fecal Matter.
Stop it.
The first in a series of joke bands that came out of the Friends scene around the Melvins. Kurt gave Christ a home demo of Fecal Matter and bugged him for months to start a band together, and Christ finally gave in. Late in 1986, Kurt got an apartment and made scratch by working at the Polynesian Resort in Ocean Shores and spent his free time in Olympia going to shows. This is how he met Tracy Mirander, who he moved in with. But she was supporting them both with a job at the Boeing plant cafeteria in Auburn, often stealing food to keep the two of them fed, while Kurt slept all day, worked on his art all night, and tried to make it with Chris and their band Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
Then he met and started dating Toby Vale, who was in the band Bikini Kill and big in the punk zine space. A badass in her own right, Kurt said he literally threw up after he met her. He was so overwhelmed by how much he was into her.
Wow.
This inspired the line in the song Aneurysm, "Love you so much it makes me sick." But this relationship didn't last because Kurt was basically looking for a mom and Toby was too punk rock for that shit. She was a goddamn riot girl, 3 R's, and some say that she was, and some say she wasn't, she was not going to be held back by some dude.
Mm-hmm.
So Kurt and Chris have a revolving door of drummers. They're touring or whatever, right? And then they get Chad Channing to join and they record Bleach with Sub Pop Records, which released in 1989. But Kurt was also just not jiving with Chad. So the two found Dave Grohl and their next album was a major label release, Nevermind, in September of 1991. And so, do I even need to say more?
No.
They blew up. They were huge after this. Seattle was already a scene being scouted by this time. Nirvana gets a lot of credit for putting Seattle on the map and popularizing the alternative rock scene that was going on here for a long time. But the truth is that a lot of these other bands that shot to stardom from roots in Seattle were already getting there on their own. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go off on a tangent too much, but to lump Nirvana in with Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden is to not understand music at all, because these bands all had very different sounds, especially from Nirvana.
Right, for sure.
Anyway, now Kurt is on MTV and doing interviews and playing shows to tens of thousands of people, and he hated it. This is common knowledge. In 1992, he said, quote, "When you're in the public eye, you have no choice but to be raped over and over again. They'll take every ounce of blood out of you until you're exhausted. I'm looking forward to the future. It will only be another year, and then everyone will forget about it."
So he was hoping that they were just like a phase and that he could just fade out and go back to quietly making art.
Yes. And it's fair to say that's what he hoped for, that Nirvana would have their 15 minutes and go back into relative obscurity. Of course, that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. Nirvana had just been part of a new era of music that would dominate the first half of the 90s and change the landscape of the rock music scene pretty much forever.
Mm-hmm.
And like, here's the thing. Kurt hated that Nirvana was so popular. It meant people that he did not like and did not agree with politically were buying their albums and coming to their shows. Kurt was a leftist, dude. I mean, he was a punk kid. These anarchists and socialists, anti-authoritarian humanists. Kurt was anti-racist and pro-choice feminist and a supporter of the gay community. He was known for wearing dresses and telling people who didn't agree with his views that they could fuck off, and he didn't care if he lost them as fans.
Mm-hmm.
The date and details of when Kurt met Courtney Love is up for debate, depending on who you're talking to. A 1993 authorized biography of Kurt Cobain says it was a Dharma Bums show. Side note, Dharma Bums is a Jack Kerouac book, the same Jack Kerouac book that Leah Roberts referenced when she left to go on her road trip and went missing forever.
Yes. Weird callback. Yeah.
Strange callback.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so according to this biography, he was at this Dharma Bum show and Nirvana played a set in January, and that's where he met Courtney Love in 1989. January of 1989. Another biography published in 2001 claims they met at a club in Portland in January of 1990. An acquaintance of both Kurt and Courtney claims in his book in 2006 that he was the one who introduced the pair in May of 1991.
Okay.
Regardless, what is not disputed is that Courtney pursued Kurt. And by late in 1991, they were spending a lot of time together, and they were married in February of 1992. Courtney gave birth to their daughter, Frances, in August of that same year. LA County Department of Child Services visited the Cobain home just days after Courtney gave birth to check on Frances and later took them to court, stating their drug use made them unfit parents. Frances was removed from their home for a short period of time in the first few weeks of her life.
Shit. I didn't know that.
Kurt, of course, didn't just start using drugs when he met Courtney. He'd been using in some way, shape, or form since the 7th grade when he got drunk for the first time. Kurt often drank to oblivion, and he was the kind of drug user that didn't really discriminate. He tried and did them all. At some point as a kid, he'd been diagnosed with ADD and been prescribed Ritalin. He also suffered from chronic bronchitis his whole life, as well as an undiagnosed chronic stomach condition. He said he'd get endoscopies and they would see the irritation in his stomach, but was told it was all psychosomatic and caused by his anger and all his screaming.
Okay.
He also said he'd had minor scoliosis in junior high. He had manic depression and narcolepsy, according to Kurt himself. His family had a history of suicide, mental illness, and alcoholism, including 2 uncles that had died by suicide with guns.
Shit.
Kurt's first experience with heroin was in 1986, given to him by a dealer in Tacoma who had been dealing him Oxy. For several years, his heroin use was sporadic, but by the end of 1991, he was a full-blown heroin user. Mm-hmm. Kurt claimed that he was, quote, determined to get a habit as a way to self-medicate his stomach condition. Quote, it started with 3 days in a row of doing heroin, and I don't have a stomach pain. That was such a relief. But his friend Buzz called that bullshit. He said that Kurt's stomach pain was more likely caused by his heroin use. Quote, he made it up for sympathy, and so he could use it as an excuse to stay loaded. Of course he was vomiting. That's what people on heroin do. They vomit. It's called vomiting with a smile on your face. Kurt came clean with Chris and Dave about his heroin use between 1990 and early 1991. And it began to affect the Nevermind tour. During a 1992 photo shoot with Michael Levine before their first Saturday Night Live performance on January 11th, he nodded off multiple times. Kurt told his biographer, quote, they're not going to be able to tell me to stop, so I really don't care. Obviously, to them, it was like practicing witchcraft or something. They didn't know anything about it, so they thought that any second I was going to die. Mm-hmm. The morning after the band's performance on Saturday Night Live, Kurt had his first near-death overdose, and Courtney resuscitated him. It would be a little over a year later, 1993, that Kurt would overdose at their home in Seattle, and Courtney had to call the paramedics. He was taken to Harborview Medical Center, but was just discharged the same day.
Jeez.
A couple months later in July, right before a show, Courtney resuscitated him from an overdose with a dose of naloxone, and he got right on stage like nothing had even happened.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine that. What a life.
Insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
According to reports, Courtney had seen Kurt close to death by overdose over a dozen times. Meanwhile, Nirvana's second major label album, In Utero, had been released earlier that year and was topping the charts. The band did its first U.S. tour in 2 years, and that November sat down in the MTV studios for their night of Unplugged, which is considered to this day to be one of the most iconic Unplugged performances of all time.
I had the Unplugged album on CD. It's fucking incredible.
Beginning to end. The album released the following year, almost 7 months after Kurt died. It debuted at number 1 on the charts, went 8x platinum, and is the source of Nirvana's only Grammy Award.
Wow. That was their only Grammy Award, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
In early 1994, Nirvana started on a European tour with their final concert in Munich on the 1st of March. It would be a few days later in Rome that Kurt was rushed to hospital unconscious from a dangerous mix of Rohypnol and alcohol, and the rest of the tour was canceled. Later, Courtney would claim that this was Kurt's first suicide attempt.
Okay. And why did she think that those were different than the other near death?
Well, there's a lot of people who say that when they heard that from her, it was the first they were ever hearing about it. And that at the time, no one considered it a suicide attempt.
Okay.
On March 18th, Courtney called 911 from their Seattle home and told them Kurt was suicidal and had locked himself away with a gun. When the cops arrived and took a bunch of guns and pills out of the house, Kurt told them he wasn't suicidal at all. He said he was locked away in a room to hide from Courtney. Very soon after, Courtney put together an intervention on Kurt. In the days before the intervention, Christ took Kurt to dinner, and it turned into Christ unwittingly driving Kurt to meet with his dealer. He said of Kurt at the time, quote, "He was really quiet. He was just estranged from all of his relationships. He wasn't connecting with anybody. His dealer was right there. He wanted to get fucked up into oblivion. He wanted to die. That's what he wanted to do." David Grohl said that by the time they recorded You Know You're Right, the final song the band recorded before Kurt died, quote, "It was not a pleasant time for the band. Kurt was unwell. Then he was well. Then he was unwell. The last year of the band was tough."
Yeah, I bet.
So the intervention was 10 people that included fellow musicians, record execs, and one of Kurt's closest friends, Dylan Carlson. Kurt checked into a residential detox facility in LA like 5 days later, but he was there less than a week before he literally scaled a 6-foot wall and bailed on rehab. The day he left to check into detox, Kurt allegedly asked Dylan to buy him a shotgun, telling Dylan it was for self-protection, and they went out to buy the gun together before he left for LA. After Kurt leaves treatment, no one knows where he is. He contacts no one and shows up nowhere. So Courtney hires Tom Grant, a private investigator, to track him down. According to Tom's website dedicated to Kurt's case, she called him Sunday, April 3rd, and told him someone was using her husband's credit card, and she wanted him to try to find out who it was.
She didn't assume that it was her husband who she was trying to find? Or did she?
She told Tom that someone was using her husband's credit card, and she wanted Tom to come find out who it was. That's what she told him to get him to her hotel.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
So Tom took another investigator with him named Ben Klugman to meet Courtney at the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. He claims that Courtney warned him as they walked into the room, quote, "If you leak this to the press, I'll sue the fuck out of you."
Okay.
Courtney told them her husband was Kurt Cobain, that he just left a drug rehab, then said she lied to the credit card company and had his card canceled, that she wanted them to call the credit card company and find out what the attempted activities were on this canceled card. And when Tom told her she could do all that herself without paying him $50 to do it, he alleges that she sarcastically responded with, "What, that's not enough money for you?" Courtney told them that Kurt only had one credit card, and without that one card, he had no access to money. She said Kurt didn't have any friends or anyone else that might loan him money. When they questioned Courtney more about Kurt's ability to get money, she apparently said to them, quote, "This guy can't even catch a fucking cab by himself."
Yikes.
Courtney told them she had planted a story with the Associated Press the night before, alleging that she had overdosed and was in the hospital. She claimed the reason she did this was to scare Kurt and get his attention, so he'd try to contact her.
Okay.
Later that afternoon, while Tom was with her in the hotel room, Courtney rambled on in an angry rage about the $9.5 million Kurt was walking away from by backing out of Lollapalooza. Tom also claims that Courtney ranted and raged throughout the afternoon about money, about Kurt not doing Lollapalooza and the almost $10 million he was missing out on by backing out, not thinking about Frances, saying, well, she could just play Palooza if he wouldn't. Courtney. She also mentioned that Kurt wanted a divorce and mentioned a prenup, but then said that all the houses and assets were in her name.
Okay, Courtney.
Courtney said she didn't know for sure where Kurt was. She said he might be in Seattle or he may have flown back east to stay with Michael Stipe. What she didn't tell them was that Kurt had been seen at their Lake Washington house on Saturday morning, April 2nd, by Callie, who's actually named Michael DeWitt, the nanny who was living at the Cobain residence. Callie would later claim he told Courtney on Saturday, April 2nd, that Kurt had been to the house earlier that morning. Callie said Kurt came into his bedroom and they had a short conversation.
So she's just fucking lying.
Supposedly.
Okay.
If you go by what Tom Grant says.
Okay, that's fair.
Courtney asked Tom to find someone in Seattle to watch a drug dealer's apartment and other locations in case Kurt turned up, but she didn't ask him to watch the Lake Washington house. So Tom subcontracted with a PI firm in Seattle for this surveillance of these locations. On Monday the 4th, Tom had another meeting with Courtney at her hotel. She told Tom she had pretended to be Kurt's mom and called in a missing persons report to the Seattle PD.
Why can't she be his wife?
I don't know.
This is weird. Okay.
Tom's team continued to surveil locations in Seattle and monitor the credit card, which had continuous attempts to be used. Courtney told them that Kurt only stayed at the best hotels, so they started calling around Seattle at all the fancy hotels to try to locate him. Courtney also said she didn't want Kurt to know she was looking for him. She said he was suicidal. This was in response to whether or not they should go to the hotel room when they found a possible hit on Kurt in a hotel in Seattle. And then less than an hour later, Courtney told Tom she had called that room and spoken to that man that they thought might have been Kurt, and she said it wasn't him.
Why has she hired people to do this if she's just going to keep inserting herself and fucking botching it? Like, what is going on? This is weird. Okay.
By Wednesday the 6th, with Kurt still not located, it was time for Tom to go to Seattle himself and see what he could find. He would start at their house. Courtney said she couldn't go herself because she had business to take care of in LA. And even though she told Tom not to tell anyone he was coming, she later said she had given Callie, the nanny, a heads up that Tom was on his way. Earlier, she had said she didn't trust Callie, but now she was saying he won't tell anyone. As Tom left her hotel room, she yelled at him dramatically, "Save the American icon, Tom."
What?
This is all according to Tom Grant.
Okay.
When Tom landed in Seattle, he met up with Dylan, Kurt's good friend. Kurt and Dylan had been friends since before he was ever... Kurt and Dylan had been friends since before in Olympia or Aberdeen or something. And they're strategizing on their search plans. And as they made their way to locations to check for Kurt, a drug dealer's apartment, a few cheap motels on Aurora, they talked about Kurt. Dylan told Tom he didn't think Kurt was suicidal at all, that the shotgun was for protection because Kurt was super worried about intruders. And here's the thing. People knew where Kurt and Courtney's house was. They didn't live in a gated community or anything. They had this house in Seattle. Like, they were fucking famous. So it's,
Yeah.
And Dylan also said that Kurt absolutely did not stay in the finest hotels, that he, quote, usually stays in some pretty ratty places. He also said the only reason Kurt didn't get the shotgun himself is because the cops had already confiscated his other guns and he didn't want them taking that one too.
Okay.
It was 2:15 in the morning on Thursday the 7th by the time Tom and Dylan got to Kurt and Courtney's house. Dylan went up to the house while Tom waited in the car. It was 5 minutes before Dylan came back and said no one was home. So they called Courtney and asked her to have the alarm company turn off the alarm so they could enter the house and look around. They accessed the house through a kitchen window. They searched the house. Dylan commented on how clean the place was and how he'd never seen it that clean before. And they found a TV on in one of the bedrooms. It was Callie's room. And having come up empty, the two left and resumed their search together the next morning. So the next day, they went to a bunch more places where Kurt was known to hang out. And that evening, they headed out to Carnation, where Kurt and Courtney owned a couple of vacation cabins. But in the dark and the rain, Dylan wasn't sure he'd be able to find the turnoff for the property, so they gave up. Mm. They stopped at a payphone. Dylan called someone, and when he came back to the car, he told Tom that Courtney got arrested and was in the hospital. He finally got Courtney on the phone, and she told Dylan she wanted them to go back to the house and look for the shotgun, which she thought might be in a secret compartment in her closet.
But why, though?
I don't have answers for you, sister.
Not taking questions at this time. Okay, sorry. Go on.
It was 9:45 p.m. by the time they got to the house. They found a note from Callie on the stairs that wasn't there the night before when they searched the house. It said in part, quote, "I can't believe you managed to be in the house without me noticing. You're a fucking asshole for not calling Courtney." Tom felt like the note was intended for him to find, not Kurt. He said it seemed phony. And when he mentioned this note later to Rosemary Carroll, a person who knew Kurt, Courtney, and Callie very well, I think she was Courtney's publicist or something.
Okay.
She agreed, quote, "Didn't it, Tom? Didn't it sound phony?" Mm-hmm. And then Callie left for LA, Tom never meeting him or speaking to him while in Seattle looking for Kurt. Later, Callie would say he was hardly in the house after Monday because Courtney kept calling and saying she knew Kurt was there. Tom found all of this very strange.
Yeah, I'm finding it strange.
Mm-hmm. Friday morning, April 8th, Dylan and Tom are going to head back out to Carnation to find and check on these cabins. Dylan makes a call first. He comes back to the car and tells Tom a body was found at the Cobain home. They turned on the radio to find out more. It was Kurt. Tom claims Dylan showed no reaction to this news.
That's weird.
They heard Kurt was found in the greenhouse, and Tom asked Dylan, "What's the greenhouse?" Dylan told Tom it was a room above the garage. And when Tom asked Dylan why they didn't look in there when they were searching the house, Dylan was like, "It's just a dirty little room. I think they keep some lumber in there or something." Kurt's body was discovered by an electrician that had arrived at the house that morning to install security lighting. When he peered into the room above the garage, he thought at first that whoever was in there was just sleeping until he noticed blood coming from their ear. He also apparently found a suicide note with a pen stuck through it in like a planter box.
Okay.
But it was actually inside the room, not outside the room. But it's like a greenhouse, so it's like all windows.
Glass, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kurt windows. Yeah. Shotgun on his chest, and a shot had his hospital wristband on, along with the wristwatch featuring the face of Portland local celebrity Tom Peterson. And it almost appears as if he's also still wearing the hospital gown. It's hard to say. It could have been one of his weird button-up shirts, but it literally looks like hospital gown print. Well, he's also wearing jeans with a black leather belt. He had fresh needle marks on the inside of both elbows. His wallet was there with his driver's license, which was used to identify that it was indeed Kurt. Also on the floor was his kit, all his paraphernalia kept in a cigar box, and a pack of American Spirits, the dark turquoise ones. Mm-hmm. The first officer to arrive on the scene was a patrol unit, followed by 3 more officers, supervisors, and up to 12 individuals in total who walked the 19-foot by 22-foot room where Kurt's body was found before a single homicide detective arrived to take over.
Jesus Christ. So they didn't tape it off. They're not preserving evidence. They're just being looky-loos.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah.
And while later in a 1997 episode of Unsolved Mysteries, the Seattle PD would claim that they treated the death as a homicide investigation from the very start, a spokesperson for the Seattle PD, Vinette Tishy, standing next to the medical examiner at the end of the Cobain's driveway just hours after his body was discovered, would tell the press, quote, "It is obvious this man is dead from a shotgun wound to the head. Now, there was a suicide note left inside the house."
Mm-hmm.
And just for funsies, I'll point out, this is the Seattle Police Department, whose chief at the time was Crime, Wine, and Chaos alum Norm Stamper. Kids Club members may remember him from the bonus episode where we covered the battle in Seattle.
Yep. Mm-hmm. God.
The day after Kurt's body was found, his death certificate was issued with the cause of death as suicide. Manner of death, contact perforating shotgun wound to the head.
Mm-hmm.
It was determined that his body had been in the greenhouse for about 2 days before it was discovered, placing his death on Tuesday or Wednesday, April 5th or 6th. Most sources cite circa April 5th. It's as close as we're going to get.
Yeah.
Piecing together Kurt's movements after escaping treatment, it was determined he caught a plane out of LA to Seattle and apparently sat near Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses, a band that Kurt openly hated. But Duff said later that Kurt seemed happy to see him, and Duff claimed that he knew from, quote, all my instincts that something was wrong.
Okay. Well, all your
People
instincts?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. The next day, April 2nd, Kurt took a taxi to a Seattle gun shop where he bought some shotgun shells. We really know this because, well, there were receipts for that. The box of shells was found with him.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently he told the driver he wanted them because he'd been burglarized. Obviously, at some point, he scored dope. And that is the extent of what we know about what Kurt did between when he escaped on the 1st and his death somewhere around the 5th.
Okay.
News of Kurt Cobain's death was... How can I even convey it?
My God. It was like...
If you were there, you know.
Yeah. It was like when Princess Diana died.
Kurt was an icon.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you weren't into Nirvana, you knew who they were. You knew who he was. And for a lot of people, it was absolutely devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Because despite his angry lyrics and the aggressive punk-inspired music of the band, his abrasive, I don't give a fuck attitude in all his interviews, there was something extremely likable about him.
For sure.
And I think maybe it was his authenticity, his ratty thrift store aesthetic, even when he could buy anything he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of us, Kurt was a guy we knew.
Right.
Like a guy we recognized, a guy we knew was like loaded and lost, but a good guy nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all knew a guy literally in our lives who was Kurt Cobain to some degree, right? That Sunday, the 10th, a candlelight vigil was held for Kurt at the International Fountain at the Seattle Center. For those not from around here, that's very near the Space Needle. An estimated 10,000 people showed up. Courtney recorded herself reading some of his alleged suicide note, which was played for the crowd. And then she later showed up and handed out some of Kurt's stuff to the fans that were still there when she arrived.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kurt's body was released to the family after the autopsy was complete and the death certificate was issued, and was cremated 6 days after he was found. And a week after his death was announced, the first person to come out publicly and question Kurt's official cause of death was Richard Lee. Richard was a journalist originally from New York who moved to Seattle in the early 90s in search of an underdeveloped political climate. He briefly wrote for the Seattle Weekly and the University of Washington student newspaper, The Daily, before dedicating himself to a weekly public affairs TV show on public access.
Okay.
It was called Now See It Person to Person, which was an homage to renowned broadcaster Edward R. Murrow's investigative reporting show See It Now. Lee changed the name of his show to Now See It Person to Person, Was Kurt Cobain Murdered? Then to the more definitive Now See It Person to Person, Kurt Cobain Was Murdered.
Okay.
Lee is known for ambush interview practices and has had restraining orders against him from both Chris Novoselic and former Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols.
Okay.
But Richard Lee isn't the only one who has dedicated his time and his energy to uncovering the truth about Kurt's death. Tom Grant could never let it go. There was too much in his estimation that did not add up.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm positive he's the reason Kurt's death was covered on Unsolved Mysteries in 1997. He's interviewed extensively in that segment.
Okay.
Tom has a whole website dedicated to Kurt's death, which he believes was a murder, and even sells a giant PDF of his case study manual. He claims he sells it to keep the investigation going, not to make money off of Kurt's death. And I will say that a ton of his findings and thoughts are published on his website for free.
Okay.
Tom lays out how the SPD botched the investigation from the very start and then revised history later to cover their ineptitude. He paints a picture of an entire police department more interested in saying they were in the room Kurt Cobain died in than actually finding out what happened to the beloved musician.
Yeah. I mean, that tracks.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
He rips into the medical examiner, who was young and inexperienced.
A baby corner?
Basically.
Uh-oh.
For signing off on the death certificate the day after Kurt's body was found without waiting for the toxicology report to come back, which can take weeks. Because when the results of the tox screen came in, they showed that Kurt's morphine level was 1.52 milligrams per liter. That is a level 3 times a typical fatal overdose.
Oh, shit.
So this is a huge bullet point in the argument that Kurt could not have shot himself because he would have OD'd and been unable to hold the shotgun to pull the trigger.
Right. He would have been fucking blacked out. If not on his
If
way
not
to dead anyway. Yeah.
Yes. And this is a squidgy topic because on the one hand, a Seattle detective interviewed for Unsolved Mystery says, quote, I don't think they'd seen anybody with an overdose, in our county at least, that had that much of heroin inside of him. I believe he gave himself a fatal dose of black tar heroin. He killed himself because of the shotgun blast, but the heroin would have did the trick also.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go digging into the toxicology portion of the wiki on Kurt's death, it does talk about there's a little bit, I'm getting a little sciencey here.
Okay, okay.
But I'm not taking questions.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay. It does talk about the difference in the types of tox tests that can be performed. And this gets, bear with me.
Okay.
There is a test for total morphine count and then a test for free morphine count. The difference is total morphine count is the morphine that has been metabolized but still lingers in the system, in addition to the morphine that is newly introduced and yet to go through the system.
Okay.
Okay. And then there is a test for just the free morphine, the unmetabolized morphine. And some people argue that if the results on that test were the total morphine count, then that number, 1.52, isn't necessarily an alarmingly or extremely high count. It is incredibly high if it's just free morphine, and the report does not make it clear which count they are reporting.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because it's that half-life shit. Like once you do a drug, it goes into your bloodstream and it moves through your bloodstream, and then your body starts to metabolize it, but it's still in your system even after it goes through your system.
Right.
Right?
Got it. Yeah.
So there's like the stuff that's brand new, and then there's the stuff that lingers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But again, this SPD detective states that for King County, this was basically an unprecedented number in an overdose scenario. By all accounts, Kurt should have passed out, possibly with the needle still in his arm, without putting the cap back on and the needle and all his gear back into the cigar box, let alone then maneuver a shotgun to kill himself.
Right.
I would also like to personally point out that while a lot of people use the fact that Kurt asked Dylan to buy him a shotgun as some kind of proof that he was suicidal and preparing himself, a shotgun is not the first choice for anyone for suicide.
No, it's clunky and not at all. Yeah.
Especially as a heroin addict, Kurt would know exactly how much to shoot in his arm if he wanted to die.
Right.
A shotgun is, however, often the first choice for someone in search of home protection, though.
Right.
Just as he said it was for.
Mm-hmm.
Another point of Tom's is that the medical examiner claimed Kurt was sitting upright when he shot himself with the shotgun barrel on his chest, And Tom shows a drawing of what that would look like in practicality, and it is clear that if Kurt had been in that position, the gun barrel would go up well past his mouth, and it would only be implausible. It would not only be implausible that he killed himself that way, but impossible.
Right, because it's taller than his upright torso.
Yes, with the barrel resting on the floor, it goes like above his head.
Yes.
Because Kurt wasn't even that big of a guy.
No, he was kind of a small dude.
Yes. Tom also notes that while Seattle PD recons their story to claim it was a murder investigation from the start, the shotgun used was not processed for fingerprints until May 6th, a month later.
Oh my God.
The shell casings loaded in the shotgun and the expended shell casing were not processed for fingerprints until January 13th, 1997.
Holy
almost
shit.
3 years after his death.
God. Wow.
Yeah. And like, look, Tom already had weird feelings about all of it before he found out this stuff, right? A week after Kurt's death, he had a meeting with the lead detective on Kurt's case where he told the detective about all kinds of inconsistencies he had encountered in his time working for Courtney so far. Right? He had gotten a call the day Kurt's body was discovered, and there were attempts that day to use the canceled credit card that Tom had been tracking while searching for Kurt. According to Tom, the electrician that found Kurt gave a statement that included the observation that Kurt's hair appeared to have been combed.
What? Okay.
The fact that the note they claimed was a suicide note didn't read like a suicide note and more like an apology to his fans for leaving music. The last parts of the note, the handwriting doesn't really match up with the rest of the note, and all the signs that pointed to an impending divorce between Kurt and Courtney, like that would be much less lucrative for her than if Kurt just died. The motive.
Yeah.
If this interests you at all, I suggest you go to Tom's website and read up. There's a lot. I am leaving a lot out. There is a lot.
Wow, I had no idea.
There's a lot. British documentarian Nick Broomfield released his film Kurt and Courtney in 1998, which is the first time I ever heard any of this. I watched it with Sebastian's dad like in 1999 or 2000.
Your mind was blown.
I've been on this train for a long time.
Okay.
He traveled to Western Washington and interviewed friends and family and acquaintances of both Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love in his own attempt to make sense of it all, to try to determine whether Kurt's death was a suicide or not. If you've never seen this film, you really need to watch it. It's a whole vibe.
Okay.
I mean, Nick Broomfield is a whole vibe. Like that's kind of what he brings to the table. So like, and while the film does initially center around Kurt's life and his relationship with Courtney leading up to his death and the accusations that he may have been murdered, it kind of morphs into a focus on Courtney and her aggressive and assaultive attempts at suppressing speech, providing testimonies and evidence of Courtney threatening and even assaulting journalists who dare to write anything negative about her. She refused to license any of Nirvana's songs for Broomfield's film and pressured MTV to pull its financing in the middle of production, which it did.
Wow.
Bloomfield secured funding to finish the film from private investors and the BBC. For those that believe Kurt was murdered, likely at the direction of Courtney, the most damning scene in the film is when Nick catches up with and interviews El Duce.
Who's El Duce?
Eldon Wayne Hoke, known as El Duce, lead singer of the Mentors, who is this big, bearded, burly dude who claims that Courtney offered him $50,000 to kill Kurt.
Wow.
He claimed in the film that he knew who did it. He made mention of someone named either Alan or Elaine before catching himself and saying, "I mean, my friend."
Whoa.
Then he laughs and says he'd let the FBI catch him.
Oh, my God.
The bass player of the Mentors said El Duce made the whole thing up just to sell tabloids or whatever, that none of what he said was true. But it's weird because Nick Bloomfield will be the last person to ever interview El Duce because he died 8 days later when he was hit by a train.
Oh. Fuck.
Wild.
Uh-huh.
Then there was journalists Ian Halperin and Max Wallace, who also set out to investigate this murder theory. Their book, Who Killed Kurt Cobain, was released in 1999, and they came to similar conclusions as Nick Bloomfield, which was basically, there's not enough concrete proof to say Kurt was murdered, but there was enough to demand his case be reopened and reinvestigated.
Mm-hmm.
The two spent a lot of time speaking with Tom Grant, who notably recorded every single conversation he had while he was working for Courtney.
Wow.
The three of them would collaborate to publish a book in 2004 titled Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain.
Mm-hmm.
In 2015, another documentary was released exploring the theory that Kurt was murdered in partnership with Tom Grant. Soaked in Bleach also includes an interview with Norm Stamper,
Mm-hmm.
who said, quote, "If I were the chief today, I would reopen this investigation."
Well, shit. Okay, Norm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some of Kurt's friends and family believe he was murdered, while the majority believe it was suicide. Hank Harrison, Courtney Love's father, believes his daughter had motive and Kurt's case should be reopened. He's written 2 books about Kurt's death. But it's worth noting that Hank is kind of a piece of shit, kind of like his daughter, and clearly capitalizing on who his daughter is and who her husband was. So grain of salt from that guy.
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Courtney Love is easy to hate. She is loud and brash and opportunistic, and her band Hole probably wouldn't have been as successful as it was, if you consider them successful, if she was not the wife of Kurt Cobain.
Right.
In later years, she is seen conforming to Hollywood beauty standards, the very standards she put 2 middle fingers up to as a punk musician. She made a lot of money selling off a significant portion of the publishing rights of Nirvana catalog, and has been in multiple legal battles over royalties and decision-making with Chris and Dave.
Mm-hmm.
She also handed off the whole legal mess eventually to Frances, her own daughter, in exchange for a hefty loan from Frances's trust, made possible by the death of her father.
Right.
And all of that happened after Frances got a restraining order against her mom and had Kurt's mom, Wendy, and Kurt's sister, Kimberly, named her legal guardians until she turned 18.
Whoa, I didn't know that. Shit.
According to a spokesperson for the Seattle Police Department, the department receives at least 1 weekly request to reopen the investigation, resulting in the maintenance of the basic incident report on file. In March 2014, the Seattle Police did a review of the case and developed 4 rolls of film that had been left in an evidence vault.
Oh.
No reason was provided for why the rolls were not developed earlier.
Oh my God.
According to the Seattle Police, the 35mm film photographs show the scene of Kurt's dead body more clearly than previous Polaroid images taken by the police. Seattle Police stated that Kurt's death remains a suicide and that the images would not have been released publicly, but then the photos were later released one by one weeks before the 20th anniversary of Kurt's death, which is where I saw the picture of his wrist.
They
his
were
hospital bracelet.
They were
released.
Oh God.
I don't think all of them were, but there's a photograph of his foot that he's wearing Converse, and it's right next to his foot is the box of shotgun shells.
Oh God.
As recently as March of 2025, a new round of calls of hashtag Justice for Kurt have picked back up as a Seattle attorney and someone known only by their user handle is @iCupcake announced they have witnesses willing to come forward now, over 30 years after Kurt's death, who claim to have been at the house when Kurt was shot, as well as, quote, overwhelming evidence that challenges the suicide ruling.
Whoa.
As of now, Seattle PD have made no indication they plan to reinvestigate Kurt's death. And maybe Kurt did die by suicide, and that's just too sad to be true for some people, like being certain they saw Elvis alive and well buying groceries at the local Pick and Save because dying on the toilet of heart failure from decades of rampant drug use was just too undignified for a king.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kurt was too loved to be lost that way, and it must be that he was murdered rather than that he chose to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that is...
Oh, sister!
The death of Kurt Cobain.
Fuck, man. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. There's so much there. There's so much there.
More. I gave you the TLDR, and that's the longest story I've ever written for the show.
Wow. Fuck. What's your theory? If you have one.
I've always been in the camp of it's just suspicious. It is suspicious. If he was just found dead from an overdose, I don't think I would ever have questioned it.
Yeah.
But it's just, and like, here's the thing. Tom Grant has essentially dedicated his life to this. He never let it go.
Mm-hmm.
He can't let it go. And I mean, he got the story covered in 1997 on Unsolved Mysteries. Like, this guy has written multiple books with people. He's collaborated on multiple films about it. Like, he will not let it go.
Right.
And he spent time with Courtney. He's a PI.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they read people.
Yeah.
He recorded all the conversations. I can't imagine he's lying about anything.
Right.
Why would he lie about any of this? Like, what does he have to gain? I don't think he's getting rich off of his PDF of his fucking case file.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
I don't think he is.
Wow. Well,
Because if you go to his website, it's very rudimentary. It is not a fancy site. It looks like it was made in like 2002 and never updated except to update information as it comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it is not, there is nothing fancy going on with his website. He is not like selling shit besides that PDF, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
And he's convinced.
Fuck.
What do you think, sister?
I've
It's making
always
you think about it,
is.
huh?
Well, that was a lot of information that I didn't know. I've always been like, it was suicide, and much for like the reason that you just described is like people thinking that Elvis is still alive, people thinking Michael Jackson is still alive. Like, I know it's hard to digest that it was suicide, but it's suicide, and people do this often when a celebrity dies, where they're like looking for the little clues, and it's like there aren't any. They used too many drugs and they died, or they killed themselves, you know, like that's it. People want to be like, ooh, but you know, but now I don't know.
Uh-huh.
God.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm unsettled. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome. Welcome to the train.
Oh. Okay.
Nobody tell Sebastian's dad that I did this, though.
Why? Is he team suicide?
No. I think he's team Courtney did it.
Oh, I see.
But I'm worried he's going to think I didn't do it justice, and he's going to be very critical of it.
Oh, well, you know, listen.
Look, there's multiple books and movies about this. I did it in like 40 or 50 minutes. Like, I really had to crunch it down.
I mean,
you know?
This Adam has been investigating it for 30 years. Like, give us a break. You know, we're doing our best over here. Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons why I use the opener that I use is because that line from that Neil Young song, "It's better to burn out than to fade away," was in Kurt's suicide note.
Wow.
No.
Wow. Which also doesn't make sense because he wanted to fade away.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, we did it, sister.
We fucking did it. Woo!
We made it.
Do
we have?
No. Go to Patreon.
Amber's like at a loss for words right now. Her head is reeling.
I gotta go.
She is swimming in it.
I gotta go.
She has to have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It is late for her.
Yeah.
You guys, yes, go patreon.com/crime, wine, and chaos. You know, all of that, because you can learn about you can go hear about the battle in Seattle. Our, Crime, Wine, and Chaos alum Norm Stamper and the bad decisions he made as the chief of police in 1999.
Yeah.
Along with not properly investigating Kurt Cobain's death.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shit goes down in Seattle, you guys. I'm telling you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, go do that. Oh, I know what else I forgot at the top of the show when these things were supposed to happen. We got another really nice Apple review.
We did. I usually go in and check. I haven't checked in a while.
Did.
That's
and
amazing.
The username is Janny Fofani.
I love it.
And
what a great username.
The title is Hoot with an exclamation mark. And she says, Janny Fanny Fofani. She says, well researched, interesting, funny, and smart. Love the sister vibes and the good heart. 15 stars.
15?
Thank you, Janny Fanny Fo Fanny.
That's amazing. That's like 3 5-stars.
That's right. That's how multiplication works.
Look, math is hard.
Math is so
Barbie
hard.
said it. Math is hard. It wasn't yoga Barbie. It was a different Barbie, but she did say
not
math
Kundalini
is hard.
Katie, but something kind of like it.
Thank you for that, Janny. Sister, I love you. This was so chaotic.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Jeremy Williams. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Cheers!